Hi, this is Richard Hooke, and I just wanted to clarify a few things that I've covered in a new book I've done called Takedown with Rachel White of the United Kingdom. And these issues about Lee Harvey Oswald are covered in detail in the book. For people who want exact references, they should refer to the book Takedown. It's available at Amazon Books on the internet. But I just wanted to cover a few things in a couple of videos. This will be the first one, just to introduce a couple of things. But the night before the assassination on November 21st, 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald was out of Mrs. Payne's house in Irving at about 8:45 p.m. He was already out of the house. He didn't sleep there all night like they've told us. He went out through the garage, turned the light on, navigated through all the junk in there, and slipped under the door and left the light on. That's why the light was left on. He got in the Nash Rambler station wagon, supplied to him by Mrs. Payne, given to her by Clay Shaw of New Orleans. And Oswald left in the Nash Rambler station wagon 8:45 p.m. on 11/21. He went over to Jack Ruby's apartment in Oak Cliff, and he was seen there by a neighbor in a neighboring apartment of Jack Ruby's, looking for Jack Ruby, who was not there, at about 9 p.m. on 11/21. So we know Lee Oswald was already out of the house. And then he was also spotted late that night at 2:15 p.m. In Dallas at the Lucas B&B all-night cafe with Jack Ruby. At 2:15, he was spotted there by the waitress Mary Lawrence, who definitely said it was him with Jack Ruby, and she identified a scar on Lee Oswald's left cheek, and I've identified that in the book. Pictures, close-up pictures of his left cheek. So, and then after that, he and Jack Ruby went to the Holland Avenue Safe House, which was right around the block from the Lucas B&B Cafe. They may have even walked around. It's only like a block away, right around the back. And they had the final meeting of the TSBD hit team. Late that night, Loy Factor, it's in his book, The Men on the Sixth Floor, where he told his account in that book by Glenn Sample and Mark Collum. But he said they met in the safe house, Loy Factor, Jack Ruby, Lee Oswald, Ruth Ann Martinez, and Mac Wallace. So Oswald was meeting at the Holland Avenue Safe House. And then that morning, Lee Oswald was spotted in Oak Cliff at the Top 10 record store, buying concert tickets. It was some sort of a signal, because he obviously wasn't going to use the tickets, but he bought a couple of concert tickets to the Dick Clark show, and J.D. Tippett was also there in the Top 10 record store at the time, so he may be that this was, Lee was signaling Tippett that he was going to meet him at Top 10 Records at 1 p.m. that afternoon, like it seemed that Tippett was expecting him, but Lee never showed. But anyway, Lee was there at 7:30 a.m. on 11/21 buying concert tickets. There's 3 witnesses who verified it. It's an FBI report, so there's no question Lee was out of the house. He wasn't with Buell Wesley Frazier. There was no trace of him. So he didn't ride in with Buell Wesley Frazier in any car that final morning. He was in his own car. So Buell Wesley Frazier came in. There was no package. As a matter of fact, when Buell Wesley Frazier came in behind the TSBD at 8 o'clock, he passed a man who was working over at the Daltex building named Edward Shields, who said, "Where's your rider?" He yelled out, "Where's your rider?" to Frazier, because he had seen Frazier go home the previous evening, and Lee had been with him. But that morning, Lee wasn't in the car, and that's why Edward Shields said that. So Buell Wesley Frazier parked his car way back behind the TSBD, and then he walked in alone. And then later his accounts were that he remained in his car after Lee went in, recharged his battery for a while, and then came in by himself. But that's not the case. Actually, if you drive in all the way from Irving, like Buell Wesley Frazier did, your battery would certainly be charged enough on its own. You didn't need to do that. So he was by himself because he was by himself in the car, and Lee had come in by himself and parked the Nash Rambler station wagon, I believe, probably in front of the TSBD, because Frazier yelled out, I dropped him by the door. And so Lee probably came in about the same time in the other car, parked it somewhere by the reflecting pool out in front, possibly. But anyway, he came in alone. And then we also had another sighting of Lee later that morning at 9:30 a.m. At the Jiffy store on Industrial Boulevard, which is in Dallas, under the triple underpass, just about a mile away. Lee was spotted there buying some food and some beer. Some sort of a dead drop signal. But anyway, we believe now that Lee was turning over the Nash Rambler station wagon to Frank Sturgis's Latino driver, who was going to pick a number of participants up through Dealey Plaza after the assassination. So Lee turned over the car to him, and Lee possibly got a ride back to the TSBD by Frank Sturgis's Latino driver, or there was a blue Falcon who Lee had also been known to drive, parked ahead of time at the Jiffy store, and then Lee drove that back. Because actually, there is a photograph of Jack Ruby standing next to a truck by the Dealey Plaza rail yard. His truck that he used to run guns in. It's a black and white photo, but it was a green truck that he used to run guns in, and there's a little blue Ford Falcon parked next to it. And this photo was taken right after the assassination. So those two cars were there. So Lee got back to the TSBD either by the Falcon or by a ride from Frank Sturgis's Latino driver, who then the Rambler station wagon was parked by the railroad tower in the rail yard, where Lee Bowers was working, the switching manager up above in that tower during the assassination. So that car was in position to make the pickup of Frank Sturgis first after the assassination, and then actually it got Mac Wallace and circled around and got Lee at 12:40. But I'm going to cover that in the next video. So thanks. This was just part one about Lee Oswald and his related activities to the JFK assassination. I'll talk to you later. Bye.